Hey everyone, Big Mike here, Big Mike Sports, Atlanta-born, Carolina-raised, Detroit-driven.
The one and only. Yeah, I'm back!
And I was just asleep at the wheel a little bit because that's exactly what some of the top NFC contenders have been doing the past week or two, as we've seen the Cowboys and the Eagles lose some pretty questionable games. The Eagles being the most questionable probably, as they've gone on a little 3-game losing skid to kind of begin to close out their season in a little bit of awkward fashion. I mean, it wasn't exactly the easiest schedule for them so far this season, the Eagles, but they've been able to win ugly all season, and I guess now it's sort of starting to turn against them. Of course, they started 10-1, but some of their blemishes are starting to be even more obvious as teams get tougher and tougher as we go into December and January. Now, the defense for the Eagles has been pretty bad this year, but it just seems to keep getting worse and worse. And then plus, the issues with their offense and what Jalen Hurts has been going through with some turnover issues and stuff like that. It's just kind of a recipe for disaster right now. So they had not the smoothest sailing, but I guess relatively smooth sailing early in the season. I mean, they were winning, right? But now it's really starting to come back and bite them. They were not able to take their lumps early in the season and kind of struggle early, and so now they're kind of reckoning with it. The Cowboys did kind of have some speed bumps earlier in the year, and of course, going into Buffalo is not very easy at all, especially when you're going up against that Buffalo defense, which has been starting to turn it on recently, and plus the Buffalo offense is being able to kind of cover up some of their deficiencies, I guess, by running the ball so many times there and not letting Josh Allen try to play hero ball and turn the ball over. And the Cowboys also have to go into Miami, who's been a hot team with something to prove, as I don't think that they've beat a team with a winning record yet this year, so they're going to try and prove something in their own building there. So not an easy game for the Cowboys at all there either. So yeah, those are two top seeds kind of going through it right now, going through some struggles. And of course the 49ers, they're still cruising the way that they have been all year, but they do have a tough game against the Ravens coming up. So, you know, a lot of the tough teams in the NFC really going through some rough patches right now, while the Lions, on the other hand, currently taking up the 3 seed, have taken their lumps earlier in the season, but it has not resulted in back-to-back losses yet this season, and they're coming off of their most dominant win of the season yet in that home victory against the Broncos. And now they go into their final gauntlet of the season as we get ready for a playoff run in Detroit, going at Minnesota here on Christmas Eve. And now Minnesota's going to be a tough team. Minnesota is not a pushover, even though they have their 4th quarterback of the season starting in this one with Nick Mullins. Back when Nick Mullins was playing for the 49ers, there were some Mullins truthers out there. When Jimmy G kept going down, Nick Mullins would come in and he'd do a serviceable job. There were certain stats that people like to cherry pick from back then where it actually made Nick Mullins look really, really good. And with the eye test, we can tell that he wasn't the greatest. He made some plays here and there, but he's not really a guy that you could really depend on to win a game for you. But still, probably average quarterback, I would say. He made enough plays against the Bengals to kind of at least build the lead against them in the early part of the game. Of course, they blew the lead at the very end, but that's a different story. He at the end of the game, he did throw a couple of interceptions there, so maybe the Lions could capitalize on that. But of course, the big thing with the Lions is their defense and whether the improved defensive play the past couple weeks will continue to translate as we go into this one. Now, this is probably going to be a pretty low-scoring game. The Vikings not giving up a whole lot of points recently, and luckily the Lions defense has been playing a little better the past few weeks, like we've said, holding the Broncos to just 17. And yeah, so it'll probably be a low-scoring game. The Vikings, of course, love to blitz. They have the number 1 blitz rate in the NFL, and Goff has not been the greatest against pressure. The QBR, while facing the blitz, is 15th on the year, and there was the time when he was turning the ball over a lot where in pressure situations he was, just kind of throwing it up for grabs and I guess panicking in a way and really holding onto the ball for too long. But I think that by now him and the coaching staff have been able to work that out and kind of game plan against those kind of blitz-heavy teams, as he's handled pressure like a little better, at least last week he did. And in the Saints game, he was able to play under pressure pretty well. Not perfect again, but still, better than he was in those games against the Packers and the Bears. So hopefully the coaching staff and Goff will have that all figured out and they'll be able to scheme some ways to, when Goff does have to face that pressure on his drop back passes, he'll be able to make plays despite it. Now, the run game is going to be pretty important in this one, as the Lions are probably going to have to try and possess the ball and, just keep their defense off the field, because that's another big thing. You don't want to wear out your defense. You want to keep them fresh and keep them playing well, especially in this game. So, yeah, they'll probably want to possess the ball here and hold on to the rock with the run game. So look for Montgomery and Gibbs to continue their run of dominance here. They have a chance at being the first double 1,000-yard rushers for the Lions team, and who knows, maybe ever. Couldn't tell you when the Lions had 2,000-yard rushers in the same season. But Gibbs needs like 70 yards per game to reach that threshold, and Montgomery needs about 50 yards per game in each game to reach that. So it's entirely possible, and hopefully the Lions will be depending on those guys to carry the mail in this one.
Yeah!
Now continue on with the defense, since it's going to be a big game for them to see if they can keep up the intensity that they showed last week with some big hits and just finding the ball and, just playing without fear, basically. Some key injuries on this defensive side of the ball for the Lions. Derek Barnes, starting linebacker, is doubtful for this game. Probably not going to make it for this one. He did suffer that shoulder injury last week. He was able to come back into the game a little bit for that one, but yeah, I guess his stats for this game is not looking too good. So that means that Jack Campbell will have to get in there and continue to show more pizzazz when it comes to finding the ball carrier and bringing him down. He's had some pretty nice tackle totals in the games where he has been starting. He has to improve in coverage, which a lot of the young Lions rookies and young defense players all do, really. But yeah, when it comes to run stopping, Campbell's definitely showing himself to be one of the best. I mean, that's one of the big reasons that they drafted him in the first place, was for his run stopping ability. And he's shown some ability in the pass game as well, but yeah, mostly just finding the ball carrier there. So he should be able to continue doing what he does well, and he should be right up there with Anzalone, right around 9 or 10 tackles for the game. And also, Jerry Jacobs not going to be able to play in this one. He is out for this contest. He did not start last week. Khalil Dorsey started in his place, and Dorsey will start once again in this game. Jerry Jacobs has been starting most of the season, but he's been beat quite a few times, and it's been kind of up and down play, because earlier in the season he was playing pretty well, but then just a rash string of defensive pass interference calls came his way, and he was just never really the same after that. I mean, he bounced back a little bit afterwards, but yeah, a little bit of a liability in one-on-one man coverage, as we saw in the Packers and Bears games. So he won't be able to play in this one. Dorsey and another recent acquisition, Kindle Vildor, for the Lions in the quarterback position, played pretty well in that Broncos game. We'll see if they can continue that kind of game in this one. And the Lions secondary will have their hands full with Jefferson and Addison, the star receivers for the Vikings, and they're probably going to have to go to them a lot, because the Lions' run defense is really good. Now, Madison is probably not going to be able to go in this game for the Vikings. However, Chandler, the backup running back for the Vikings, played really well against the Bengals, so they'll have to keep their eyes on him, the Lions defense will, coming out of the backfield and also running the ball. Though you can't fall asleep and think too much about the Vikings receivers and, let this guy run loose on you. But the Lions rush defense has been one of the high points for the defense so far this year. So looking forward to them hopefully being able to bottle up that run game and force Nick Mullins to make all the decision and hold all the cards for the team. And in that case, you could very well be able to force Mullins into some mistakes, especially late in the game. If the Lions are able to have a late lead and put a lot of pressure on Mullins to perform, he's probably going to force a pass that he shouldn't, trying to be aggressive and just make a play, and the Lions defense should be able to capitalize there. So yeah, that'll be an interesting matchup to look at. And C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the star safety that the Lions acquired during the offseason, who was injured with a pec injury in the second game of the season against the Seahawks. We thought he might be able to come back for this game, but he will not end up playing in this one, most likely. He'll probably be able to come back in that Cowboys game, hopefully anyway. But he is practicing now though, so yeah, he should be back sooner rather than later. But not in time for this Christmas Eve game, unfortunately. But this game is very important, so the defense, despite some of these other guys who are going to have to step up and do their part, they're going to have to play really well in this one for them to be able to win, because it's going to be a tight matchup. That Vikings defense, they might be able to capitalize on some mistakes by Goff. We'll see if Goff can continue his, good play and not go back to some of the turnovers and stuff that he had in that little streak of losses kind of in the middle of the season. So, yeah, really big game. The division title on the line. This would be the first division title that the Lions have been able to get ever when it comes to the NFC North. The last division title that they got was 30 years ago, back when it was still the NFC Central with the Buccaneers in the division. So really big game in this one. The Minnesota Vikings defense is going to be a real big test for the Lions offense. We'll see if they can continue what they did last week and just completely dominating the Broncos on the offensive side at least, and for the most part on the defensive side as well. So it's really good that we come into this one with momentum, because this is definitely a win that we want to have, not only to go ahead and clinch the division, but also to stack this one going into the Dallas game. And then hopefully we'll see if they can win that one. I don't think they will. Haven't thought that they would all season because of how good the Cowboys are at home. But if the Cowboys drop that game against the Dolphins, that's at least 2 straight losses for them if that happens. So you could find them on the downside and the Lions on the upswing on a win streak as they go in there. So if the Lions could win out basically, that would bode really well for them in the playoffs, as they will most likely have to go up against a Rams team that has been really hot themselves lately, going I think 5-1 in their last 6, and Stafford going for like 13 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in that same time frame. So yeah, really, really important games coming up for the Lions, and it all starts with this one on Christmas Eve. Hopefully they can gift wrap the NFC North division just in time for Christmas with a win.